If he doesn't trust himself,
she's going to know.
Why the fuck would she trust him?
Yeah. We're showing females as in society, which is boss babes. It's sort of like a self-responsibility for the male to work on his masculine energy.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Make Men Great Again podcast. I'm your host, Scott James Andrews, and today I've got a very special guest with me who's done a lovely drive up here, so thank you for coming, Amanda. She's going to talk all things healing today, energy and relationships, and we're going to ruffle a few feathers today, I would say. So Amanda's going to give a bit of an introduction. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Amanda, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Great to be here. So I am a energy healer. I work specifically with men, with the subconscious mind, and a lot of emotional healing work. Yeah.
And can I ask you, like, what brought you into this space?
Honestly, it was just random events that just came together, and I ended up
random. It wouldn't be any synchronicities there, just absolutely random.
Definitely divine timing. I was sort of guided. Everything happened for a reason, and I ended up doing healing work. First, starting with crystals and learning about energy. Okay. I was so closed off to actual energy in the past, and then the crystals, and then the wholesaler that I was buying from ended up pointing me in the direction of theta healing, and I went to a lady in Sunshine Coast, one of the last in-person theta healing practitioners teaching it, and learned through her, which was brilliant because after the first one, I had no intention to offer it as a service. After the first one, I loved it, and it gave me, I guess, power to change my thoughts, beliefs, emotions, and get back power in my life. So I went and did like 4 trainings with her, also specialist trainings, and about halfway through that, I decided that it's worked well for me. It's going to work for other people. So that's how I started offering it.
Awesome. And how did that connect back to the relationship stuff?
Yeah, interesting. So I've been on my own journey with the emotional healing and eventually with my own relationships. I was in a relationship for 6 years, and that broke down for a number of reasons. And then I started to learn about why it potentially broke down and the different energetic signs at play, the masculine and feminine energies that were contributing to maybe an imbalance or a mismatch. And then I sort of learned about that, the hard way.
So the relationship obviously ended by the way that you're communicating about it?
Yes.
Yeah. And how long ago was that?
That was maybe 6 months ago.
Wow. Yeah. So you've been like on this deep dive since then. Were you, during the relationship, you were figuring out this stuff as well?
Yeah, definitely. I was figuring out the emotional side of things. So going into energy healing, I sort of became aware of my emotions and started developing emotional maturity, emotional intelligence, and soon realized that needed to be reciprocated in a relationship. It wasn't really getting there. So I didn't quite get to the masculine and feminine energies until after the relationship, but there was definitely like an emotional awareness, a growth and an evolution that led to the end of the relationship because it just wasn't compatible after all the work that I had done on myself.
Gotcha. That's really interesting to hear that it's only been 6 months because like watching some of your content, obviously I for the listeners, I was just preparing guests for the podcast, literally just scrolling on Instagram and came across your content, and you were talking about a video that really caught my attention, just saying I used to be a feminist and now I'm I don't know what the exact language was, but something along the lines of now I'm more in tune with my feminine, with being in my feminine. And it was talking about like a mixture of, I think, like gender roles and how society and really like alpha women has become like a popularized thing, but that might not necessarily be the healthiest thing to thrive in relationships. Again, in no way, shape or form, for me personally, like my wife's an alpha, like she's an absolute weapon, but because I understand the masculine, feminine stuff, we know how to kind of manage that. But the point of me saying this is like 6 months, your content seemed very mature. it seemed like you got it, where I think very few people do. And it's really interesting to see that, like, normally one would think, oh, okay, this, you have to have been doing this for 10 or 15 years. And the reason why that's extra interesting is because I also found the same thing. For me, I was in a 5-year engagement with a lovely person, but it just wasn't working in the end. And intimacy, sex, all those types of things had just pretty much vanished. Partly my fault, partly her fault. Doesn't matter who was to blame. The point was, I went on a journey. I worked with a marriage counsellor, and then I worked with a relationship coach, Camille, who I actually had on the podcast in Melbourne last week. So if you guys haven't seen that episode, definitely go and check that out. But it was similar to me, where once I read and once I started to understand this masculine, it was like that. I suddenly could see every issue in every relationship in my past, and like somebody literally, like I had been wearing a pair of contact lenses that was like covered red, and I saw everything through that lens, and it was like this. I read David Dieter, Way of Superior Man. I started working with a coach who, understood these things, and I started, of course, looking into these types of things and researching more and more and more, and the cool thing is about this type of stuff, and maybe people will get this just from this podcast alone, they might start Googling or might start watching your content. You don't have to be a psychologist to understand this stuff. It's pretty common sense stuff when you really just look at your past relationships, you look at, understand things, and you start to apply this. Was that like your experience? Did you find that the similar thing to me, where you learnt it and then suddenly everything made sense? Or was it and of course, things can take time as well, but the main oomph of it?
Yeah, so I was aware of masculine and feminine energies while I was in my previous relationship.
Okay.
Was I wearing my blinkers? Yes. I didn't actually take the time to...
How aware? When you say aware, what do you mean? What's the level of awareness? Because there's a scale of awareness, right? How aware were you about all the stuff that you know now?
Pretty light on. And then it was when I left that relationship, it all started coming, and it was really quick because I got put in a situation where I met someone who was a healthy masculine, and I learned through experience while also researching and learning, but it was quick. It was quick to understand the nuances, and then obviously you could learn more as you go, but as a basic principle, you can see it in so many different scenarios how it plays out.
Yeah.
But you have to be willing to see it, because it involves a level of accountability for yourself and your own actions.
Yes. Yeah, I completely agree. And so now you're doing this, and you're helping other men who are in probably similar situations with me, whether with a partner, maybe. Well, walk me. What are some of the symptoms that, let's say somebody, actually, before we even talk about that, tell me, for the listeners, what is masculine energy, what is feminine energy, and give us a bit of a breakdown on it, so that every conversation from now on, people will kind of have some context, and then we can go into other stuff.
Yeah, of course. So I guess the simplest way to look at it is that masculine energy is more so the doing, the actual execution, whereas the feminine energy is more the creative side of things, so the ideation. So they work well together. Everyone has both masculine and feminine energies. However, we do have one dominant energy. Usually females are more dominant in feminine, and usually males are more dominant in masculine. So the way that it shows up in a person, the masculine energy, or a healthy masculine, is very focused. He's very stable, strong, and present. And he's on track towards his goals. He lives in integrity.
So when he says he's going to do something, he does it.
His words and actions match.
And that's important for women.
Very important. We need to be able to feel safe. That's the number one thing a woman wants in a relationship, is to feel safe. So when she sees a man following through on his word, being present, being stable, not easily derailed, she feels safe.
Because that's a man that is, from a primal perspective, that's a man who can provide and protect and obviously keep her safe. Now, in this day and age, we don't have those same environments as we did many years ago, but that's a part of our DNA. Like, that's not going anywhere, is it? No matter how many feminist movements come through, like that's our core essence. So that's what the masculine is. And so what does a healthy feminine look like?
A healthy feminine is very receptive. and soft and gentle. So she's able to go with the flow. She's in tune with her emotions, and she's nurturing and uplifting. Like, she should be able to support a masculine, uplift, and make him feel
so nurturing is the word that comes to mind. Like, no,
yes.
Yeah, like, because I do have a good perspective of that because of my relationship, and I've also had previous relationships, so I've got bad, or not necessarily bad, but like other perspectives.
It's like an unhealthy feminine, I guess.
Yeah, and there's both sides. There's wounded or unhealthy feminine and wounded, unhealthy masculine. I think this is the conversation where people say toxic masculinity or this or that. What's your take on that? Do you think that obviously there's wounded, and this is just, I think I mentioned this on another podcast. You can just Google if you're like, oh, what do you mean? I'm a man. I don't have any feminine. It's like, just Google it, bro. Like you'll see in like 2 seconds. We're not making this up. So there's wounded. There's and like, do you call it healthy, grounded, and wounded, or do you call it healthy, unhealthy? What's the terminology that you use to describe?
You can go with anything. I prefer healthy, unhealthy, because it gives a sort of goal on what to work.
So that's the healthy masculine. So on purpose, taking action in alignment with what they communicate, which makes somebody feel like they can trust them. That's what gives that woman the safety.
Absolutely.
He says he's going to do the dishes. He does the dishes. He's safe. He said he was going to not spend that money on this thing, or he said he was going to take the kids out. He said he was going to be home at 7 and he was home at 7, or whatever the thing is. And that makes her feel safe. And he's focused and all that type of stuff. What does the unhealthy masculine look like? And sub-question from that, why do you feel like men get into the unhealthy versions? Because, I mean, the podcast is called The Make Men Great Again. And this is not, this is a truth serum conversation where, as men, I think we need to take responsibility for ourselves, but we also need to empower ourselves as well and go, okay, look, there's stuff that women need to be doing as well.
Absolutely.
We'll talk about the unhealthy feminine. Don't worry, fellas. We're going to have a look at the unhealthy feminine in a second as well. But unhealthy masculine, what does it look like? And when does a man enter his unhealthy masculine? Why does he go into that?
Great. So that is a loaded question.
Yeah.
So an unhealthy masculine is...
What would that look like?
He's indecisive.
Yeah.
He can't make decisions quickly, easily. Yep. He's not living in integrity, doesn't follow through. That's like a wishy-washiness. He's passive, as in he's not really taking the lead, so he will allow the woman to lead, or he will bend and compromise and people please.
Yeah. And that's that one there. I mean, I've been a coach for 15 years and working with men and women from all different ages. That's the happy wife, happy life. That's what everybody says. Then everyone said, wait till you get married, Scott. You'll understand. I'm married now. And what I understand even further, that's not the way to have a healthy marriage, is just go, well, she wears the pants and it's just easier not to fight. I think it's important to have values and morals and fight for those, even if it's in your relationship. But so that's what the unhealthy stuff. And yes, it's a loaded question, but what do you feel leads to men getting stuck in that? I mean, by the way, full transparency, I was stuck in that for a very long time. That's why I'm so passionate about doing this men's work, because nobody told me. Nobody said, Scott, dude, you're not a bad person, or you're not this. It's just like, you just don't, it's just skill. It's just like, you don't know how to do this stuff. Here is the map kind of thing. So, I mean, we're not going to go through a whole trauma healing podcast today. That's like a whole season of episodes. But in your opinion, what are a couple of things that attribute to a man being stuck in that unhealthy masculine?
Great question. So definitely society's influence is number one. The way that men are portrayed in the media in society are very emotionally repressed. They're very controlling. They're very dominating. So men that don't grow up with a healthy masculine influence, say as a father, they're just mimicking what they see in society. So they go for either this really controlling and rigid and closed masculinity. So society definitely plays a role. And then on the other hand, you've got society with women, which you mentioned yourself, you know, if the woman's wearing the pants.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just easier for a man to become passive to that. If there was someone who's really hard, who's wearing the pants, it becomes easier. And then also they can soften and sort of get away with a little bit more.
Yeah.
They can fall into playing video games and letting her getting too comfortable with that. So
because it's not worth it. That's what it feels like to a lot of men. It's not worth the trouble. Just let her have her way, which is great in the short term. A bit like, and people are really going to hate me for saying this, a bit like a child where you give in the short term, give them that candy bar and they stop screaming in the supermarket in that moment.
Yeah.
But now every experience after that, they know how to break you. Or not break isn't the right word, but they know how to influence you. But that isn't necessarily good for the kid because it gives them, the sugar isn't healthy for them, and it isn't healthy for the dynamic of the relationship because now they're the leader and you're the follower. And that's what I see in my own life when I was just wanting to be the nice guy.
Yeah.
But then what I would notice is that would just backfire. You'd be nice in this moment and be passive, but then she stopped respecting me. Because it's like, okay, well, deep down. She wants a man who will. She's kind of testing, isn't she?
She's testing.
Yeah. Let's talk about women testing.
Yeah.
Why do women? Why do you feel that women test? Do you ever test still now, or can you in your past? Yeah. What are you searching for in the test? Are you conscious of yourself while you're doing it, or is it like with emotional intelligence afterwards? You're like, oh fuck, I was definitely testing him.
It's subconscious. Yeah. It's a subconscious thing. But basically, I just want to be sure that he can hold my chaos.
Yes.
So whether that's
hold on a second. You're a woman. You're saying that you're chaotic. You can't say that.
No.
Because we're all equal and everything's got to be perfect. And
yeah, except women are very, very emotional and we feel and
that's okay, isn't it?
Absolutely, that's what it is. And
it's beautiful.
It's beautiful. And a man needs a certain level of emotional intelligence and awareness to be able to hold that and be safe with that.
I heard a great word the other day, container. A containment. I think it was, who's that girl, that Teal Swan? She used the word containment, like when a woman's, going through her emotional wave, we could use that word. She's kind of testing, can he be safe? Is he going to react? Is he? And I heard that was because, again, from a primal perspective, if we're trying to test, not consciously but subconsciously, if we're going to have kids with somebody, can they be safe with a child? All right. Hope you're enjoying the podcast thus far. Just want to take a moment of your time to ask that in exchange for this amazing value and guests and hopefully some entertainment too, if you guys have liked it so far and you want to see more, please make sure that you subscribe to the channel. At the end of the day, you can continue just to watch and all those type of things, but it does actually have an enormous impact on the level and quality of guests that I can have. And that just means better interviews for you guys. And it also means more impact in the world. The more men that can come across this channel and see this information and see the types of topics, the things that we're talking about, that can change another man's life. So if you've got value, pass it on. Pass on that value by hitting the subscribe button. With that said, guys, let's get back to the episode. Bye for now.
True. That makes
I'm not sure if you've heard that one before as well, but that made sense. Like, that makes so much sense.
Yeah. We just want stability. When we're like acting out like that, can he hold a container, like you said, where he's safe and you're able just to express and be messy and be ugly and get all of that out? Or is he going to withdraw, remove himself because he's uncomfortable, he can't handle it? He doesn't have
the strength
to just sit there and just sit and just it.
and I think the shift for me was realizing that's not who my wife is. That's just an emotional state that she's in. And a really thing that really helped me was literally like looking into her heart and going, this is not the woman, this is the girl. This is the little girl that was wounded by her friends or family or dad, or something's happened right now. She's having, some emotions come up, and when I would run, it was because I would feel unsafe. I would think she's crazy, she's nuts, what a lunatic. That's what I used to think before I did this work, and now I'm like, she's like something's triggered her. She's obviously in an emotional state right now, and I just stand there and she just to fix her. She'll usually just, like a wave, she'll crash, and then it'll just, kind of,
it'll dissipate.
It'll just settle by itself.
Yeah.
As long as I don't fuel the fire.
Yeah.
By what's wrong? Why do you always act like this? And, all that type of stuff.
Active listening is a really great skill, because if she's ranting,
and men love to fix. That's I catch myself all the time. Like, how can I help you? It's like, it's a beautiful quality, but it's not effective.
Well, no, she doesn't want your problem solved. Women.
And that's what drives men nuts, because men are logical. Men, why, if she's acting like this, is because of this, and we want to fix it so it doesn't happen again. That's our logical mind. And a woman's like, I'm not thinking about fixing. I'm not thinking about happening again. I just want to know that you're not going to judge me, that I can feel safe to be in my emotions. And 2 seconds later, I'm going to realize this doesn't even matter.
The way that women fix their emotions is by
releasing them,
talking about it. It's by riding that wave until it goes. If she's in an emotional state and she's ranting, you just hold space for that. Listen, nod, smile, whatever needs to happen in that space. It's gonna die out. Yeah, it's gonna die out as long as you're just, I got you. It's all good. You're safe to rant. It can't last forever.
I think it just goes back to the same thing before. Is a lot of men, like, they're out and they're working and they're doing things, which a lot of women are working now as well. But they're just like, men just don't have the capacity or the tools, I think. And this is why, again, that's why I'm doing this podcast, to give people the tools and things like that, introduce people to certain ideas. But a lot of men just go, you telling me I have to, like, it's my responsibility, I have to deal with that? She should just, and it's just like becomes this kind of, why do I have to? We don't have to. But if you want to have closeness, you want to have a great sex life, you want to if you want to get the best out of her, if you want to feel that, because there's nothing more beautiful than when your partner is in her feminine, she is so loving and kind and sweet. That's just so beautiful. I didn't even know that existed until I was with my current partner. But again, taking responsibility for myself, I also didn't provide the space for a woman to relax into that space.
Well, it's also a learning curve, isn't it? Every relationship that you had before where that wasn't met, you were getting closer to understand what actually needs to happen now.
Yeah. So, okay, so we talked about the men stuff, healthy, focus, purpose, in alignment, all that type of stuff.
Emotionally aware.
Mostly emotionally aware. But the key core crux of it is you need to make a woman feel safe.
Yeah.
End of story.
Yep.
That's just the bare bones of it, correct?
Absolutely.
So, and we talked about the unhealthy masculine a little bit. What were some of the other, just before we go into the women, what are some of the traits, if someone was to do a little audit on themselves, don't switch off the camera, off the YouTube right now, someone should do a little audit and go, okay, yes, I'm that, or actually, I'm actually doing pretty well. What would be a couple of the, I don't think we fully got through that, we went on a tangent, which is fine, but what are a couple of the other, like, dot points if someone was to kind of do a little audit on themselves and go, okay, am I healthy, unhealthy? We know what the healthy is. What are some more unhealthy things? So I think you said, like, controlling, or what were some other things?
So I guess an unhealthy masculine would be controlling those around him, whereas a healthy masculine would be focused on controlling himself. So that's a huge
good distinction. Yeah, I love that. So, okay, cool. What's another one?
So I think it's also the willingness to have difficult conversations. We talk about whether he's going to withdraw or react.
Yeah, so avoidance is a common one for men.
Avoidance is huge.
And we avoid with, as you said, will it be working more? A lot of guys do that though, because I'm serving my family. It's like you're kind of tricking yourself into thinking that you're doing, like, playing a good role for the family, but in reality, you're just hiding out at work.
Yeah.
So there's avoidance in many different platforms, in many different ways. There's the controlling behavior. And what was the other one you said?
We did speak about indecisiveness.
That's indecisiveness. Yeah.
Yeah. So a man that isn't able to make decisions for the sake of the relationship is not essentially someone that feels safe.
Yeah, so he doesn't trust himself. So no wonder if he doesn't trust himself,
she's gonna know.
Why the fuck would she trust him?
Yeah,
and she can feel that, right?
Can.
I think it's, don't quote me on this, guys, but I think it's 73% or 72% of communication is nonverbal. So that means it's energy, right? So that's your body language, that's your eye contact, that's just your, when someone who just is like evil or like somebody you just don't like walks in the room, you can feel them. When someone vibrant walks in the room, they're happy, you just love to be around that. They're like a magnetic personality.
Absolutely.
So people can feel that. If you don't trust yourself and you're indecisive, like how the hell, and if she doesn't feel safe, then the guy starts to complain, oh, I'm not feeling love, but we need to work on ourselves first. So those are some of the unhealthy masculine. Mm-hmm. Let's get into the women. Mm-hmm. Remind me again, what is healthy women? So it's like nurturing, loving, supportive, soft. So not nagging. So let's go into the wounded stuff.
Yeah. So when a woman is in her unhealthy feminine, usually she's going to be quite argumentative, perhaps a little bit controlling, manipulative. She's likely going to nag, criticize, and try and control.
And why does she do this? Listen up, men.
I think it is to test in a way. She wants to feel safe, but also she's wounded. So the way that she's reacting is the way that she knows how. So previous experiences, usually with the masculine or with the feminine, haven't.
So in their past, when you're saying previous experiences, so you're saying previous experiences with males in their past have taught them to kind of maybe feel unsafe. Is that what you're saying? So they're trying to take control of the situation?
Yes. Yes, and also experiences with females in the past of not maybe having a healthy example of what a soft feminine looks like.
Yes.
So she's tying into what the media portrays again, and we go back to this societal view of what we're showing females as in society, which is boss babes.
Yes.
And they're typically in control. They're very direct, and they are quite masculine.
So they're actually in the opposite of the energy which they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
So that would, to me, when I hear that, it's like, well, that can't be good. Like imagine if, I don't know, I can't think of an example off the top of my head where you're just in the wrong version of yourself. Of course, that's going to be, you're out of alignment with your core essence of who you are. Naturally, it's like being, here's an example. We've got two versions of every person's got two versions of themselves. There's the higher conscious version of us, which is like when our nervous system's in a relaxed, calm state versus our nervous system in a fight or flight state. We're going to be probably two different versions. We're going to think different, talk different, act different. So naturally with stress, stress is normal. In the same way for a woman to get into a masculine, nothing wrong with that. And for a man to even have go into his feminine for a little while, nothing wrong with that, right? If man can be nurturing, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But to live in that place, in the same way to live in stress, that's when we start to see dis-ease come into the body if it's stress. And in this case, we're talking about dis-ease in the relationships, aren't we?
It's imbalance. So I think the distinction here is that you want to be aware of it. So like you said, men can fluctuate between their masculine and feminine. Females can do the same.
Yeah.
But awareness is really great because you need to know when you're going into your masculine, when you're going into your feminine, if you want to make it work. Because I do think that balance as a whole, a relationship as a whole should be balanced. You should have one in your masculine, one in your feminine. Yes. And that creates a really, really nice dynamic.
Polarity as well.
And polarity, it is that level of attraction and draw. And that's why relationships last. So when you don't have awareness of when you're in your masculine or your feminine, it creates that dis-ease, and then you're not necessarily aware of what's going on and what's causing the arguments, because if you're both in your masculine,
and that's when you start to think this person's nuts, or the girl thinks this guy's toxic masculinity at its best again. It's like, no, this guy's trying
to control a masculine woman.
Yes.
And he doesn't necessarily know how.
It's like two alphas, basically, like two lions fighting it out in the jungle.
Absolutely.
So then at the end of it, one lion just says, well, this isn't worth
they'll roll over and submit.
Yeah. And so okay, gotcha.
And the problem comes when that's the male, because, in the animal kingdom, it's usually the female that's going to do that. For lions, lionesses, the lion is going to go hunt and protect the pride and fight. And
by the way, that doesn't make the woman less than or weak, does it?
No.
What does it? Like, for a lot of women out here, you're like, submit to a man. I don't like the way that she's talking about that. You can imagine that the feminist culture, they might not like the use of those words. If I was to play devil's advocate here, what would you say to them to help them understand what that means and why it's healthy?
Yeah. So The word submission is something that used to trigger me. Like, why?
I almost saw you tensing up. I was like, he's asking me this question.
No. It's great. It's an important conversation to have. I think submissive implies that there's a level of control.
Yeah.
But that's coming from a wounded place, because in a healthy relationship, ultimately your goal is to have a healthy dynamic. You want the relationship to work well. So you have to look at it as a whole. And if you look at, there's going to be one alpha and there's going to be one that responds more to the lead.
Yes.
It's not submission in go box yourself in.
What's another word for submission, I wondered, that would be healthier?
It's like to surrender is almost a softer
or
word.
even just to allow like the man to lead, like
it is an allowance, because the feminine is very receptive. So she's receptive to his lead. She's not being pushed over or forced into it. She's in an allowance. I think that's a really nice word to allow her just to receive his leadership. Yeah,
I like that language. I think language is really important when you're ever trying to make a point, especially if it's a triggering topic.
Yes.
Because naturally we're just going to be able to receive that conversation kind of a lot better. So allowing the man to lead.
Yeah.
And why would a woman want to do that?
So she doesn't have to.
But what if a woman says, like, I want to lead? Do you think that do you think, like, obviously there's conscious and there's subconscious. Do you think that is it healthy for a woman to lead? Like, where in your opinion does that kind of line from, like, as an example, she could be a leader at work in her own career, but she might then allow the man to lead, maybe a little bit more at home. That might be a little bit more of a healthier dynamic for the polarity of the relationship, because you can't have two lions both being alphas.
Yeah. So I think a man is happiest when he is in that role.
Yeah.
And I think
it makes him feel good.
Yeah, it does make him feel good. It makes him feel
I don't think
respected.
a lot of women really care about, like, from my experience, and maybe I'm speaking too much here, but I don't think a lot of people are really thinking about what they want their partner to feel very often.
No.
Both men and women. Like, I ask men all the time, like, well, what are your goals for your relationship? You have goals for your business. You have goals for your health. Got any goals for your relationship? They just think that putting bread on the table is going to cut it. And I'm telling you right now, it's not. So from a woman's perspective, like, I don't think that they really think, okay, how can I best make my relationship thrive? They're just thinking about themselves, maybe sometimes.
I think so. And I think the woman that wants to control or fight for control isn't really considerate of what the man wants, because yes, she wants to take the lead and control, but that's because that's what society has taught her.
And it's probably a safety mechanism if she hasn't felt safe to be led. Like, I can tell you, again, using myself as an example, my partner is very strong-minded and very successful, and I'm know from her communicating to me about her past relationships, she didn't let her man lead, but that's because she didn't trust them. She didn't feel safe. So it's not just on the woman, is it? It's on the man to step the fuck up, do those, be on purpose, be a protector, be a provider, those types of things, and then that makes her feel safe. In the absence of that, you're going to have more likeliness of her. Yes, there's some, potentially, agendas in society and in programming that massively influence the ideology of, the boss babe kind of culture and the feminist movement where you don't need a man and all these types of things. But
we do. I feel like women do. A soft feminine woman wants a man and she needs a man.
Yeah.
She does. But we're so programmed to think that we don't want that. But a woman is not in her she's not happy when she's not in her feminine frame. And that's generally speaking. I can't speak for all women, but I feel like a woman is actually happiest when she is soft and nurturing.
Yes.
She's not that happy when she's leading a team at work and in charge of all these responsibilities.
Yeah.
That's not when she's in her prime, but that's when a man is usually happiest. But it's women, needing to accept that that's actually what they like, because we're so taught that.
Do you think there's different personalities that like different things, or do you think do you think all women would be happier in some way, shape or form, whether it be at work or at home, in some areas of their life, allowing their man to lead and to take care of them.
I think so. I think most women, I can't speak for all, but it's sort of like a relief. Like, for example, in my experience,
because you're a business owner, right?
Yeah.
You said you're not a coach, but you've got your own business. You've got a social media following. You're trying to build a personal brand. So, but you've also got a partner right now who is also in the kind of coaching, personal development type of space. So, walk me through a little bit. How do you guys manage that? Because you're out there, you're not necessarily, you're being, in your words, being mindful of not going into too much boss babe energy, but at the same time, you need a little bit of that in order to, how do you navigate that?
So I will lean into my masculine energy to work on my business. That is necessary in order for me to drive and be focused and go after my goals. But I am really mindful of not bringing that into the relationship. I effectively know where I stand in the relationship, but I'm not going to go and come in strong and masculine because we clash. So, but for me, it's like I have this awareness of it. And when I push and drive in my business, when I actually go into the container of the relationship, it's like a relief. It's like,
so it's almost like you're having, I've been in my masculine all day. I've been action. Things are going wrong. I'm trying to fix things. And then finally at the end of the day, I can switch off and I can, just, I guess, surrender and relax.
I can relax.
And so what does that look like from, let's say, a day-to-day basis? A woman like, okay, maybe I'm listening to this. Maybe I can listen to what Amanda's saying and what Scott's saying. What does that look like? Could you give me an example of a time, and do you do it perfectly all the time, or do you catch yourself sometimes going into some more of those unhealthier feminine traits on occasion?
It's not so much that I'll go into the unhealthy feminine in terms of like nagging or criticizing. I'm super aware of that.
Yeah.
But it's more when I go into my masculine and try and take control of things. So especially if we're doing like a collaboration work-wise, it's hard for me to be the feminine in that scenario because naturally as I'm working, I'm more masculine. Yeah. So we haven't done a lot of collaborations yet. We are going to, but I know that it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, okay.
So I do want to throw this back to you because I know that your partner is running a business as well. So I do want to see how you would manage the masculine feminine balance when she's also doing a masculine role at work. Yeah, so
great question. And I do have lots of experience in this, and it was tough. Like Ellis and I have been together for 3.5 years, and at the start I was running my business, she was running her business. In fact, she was actually working corporate at the time, but then COVID happened and I won't go into that part because it's not relevant. But essentially we're both running and trying to grow coaching businesses, which meant lots of learning, lots of stress, challenges, investments, and we just would walk and talk a lot. It was tough at the end of the day. It wasn't so much like when we're working together. So when we're doing it separately, at the end of each day, sometimes she would still be like going. And it wasn't like that she needed to allow and do those types of things, but it was more so that she just wasn't relaxed. She couldn't relax, if that makes sense. She just felt like she was on. And that would definitely mean, things were taken out of context maybe more and we would butt heads a little bit and things like that. But what I love about my wife so much is because she's on a growth journey, she's aware and she has a goal. Like I have a goal of being a great husband. She has a goal of being a great wife. That's something that we talk about a lot. So we would be aware of that. I would be able to have instead of avoiding it, I would have a conscious conversation. Say, hey, look, when you do this, this is the way it makes me feel. Sometimes we'd even get into an argument, which is completely fine. I think it's healthy. And I would say, look, this is not working. This is not working here. And we might beef a little bit about it, but then she would accept it. So she's conscious. I think the consciousness part would work. And then because we know about this stuff, she would go, okay, cool. If I'm too much in my masculine, which is I'm spending, let's say 8 hours in my masculine per day, surely if I want to switch out, maybe we want to be more intimate or things that are missing, or maybe she's being a bit more controlling or nagging or whatnot, she would do things like baths, which is a very feminine activity. She would light candles and wear essential oils over her heart. Things that were more creative types of things that allowed her to drop out of that do, which would then kind of make her a bit more hyperactive and just find a lot more peace. So baths, she would at one stage she was doing a bath like every night. Essential oils in the bath, magnesium in the bath, listening to some spiritual music with the thing. And that, lots of acts. So we started to realize, and for me, sometimes when I was, because of some past wounds, things like that, I would maybe, when she was becoming more masculine, I would drop more into more feminine, which I'd feel more needy, or I wouldn't feel like I was loved, or I'd feel rejected. And instead of just realizing the truth, which is she's just in a masculine, it's not personal about me at all, I would go into that. So then I would start to go, okay, well, I'm going to get back into my gym. Instead of trying to have conversations with her, trying to fix her, I just let her do a thing knowing the truth. And I would just get more in my purpose. I'd make more money, or I'd do something that would make her trust me. So I understood the concept of this kind of matrix and go, okay, every time I try to talk to her about this, it doesn't go down well because she's in a masculine and she just doesn't feel safe. It's like just two egos talking to each other. And so instead, I'll just take responsibility that if she's acting like this, it's because she doesn't feel safe. And so what ended up happening is I actually then said, well, I didn't say you shut your business down. She got sick of running the business that she was running. So I said, well, I'm making plenty of money now. You can just relax. And so for 12 months, she didn't have to work.
Amazing.
She loved it. Like she was waking up at 10 o'clock in the morning. She ended up helping me and coming to my business and assisting me, with, which I loved. But then obviously the tables have turned now where her business is now flourishing. She's got a new business. And so we're now navigating the fact that we've got a daughter, and it's like a completely new dynamic where I'm really now the business strategist, CEO, marketer, basically all of the business side of her brand. And I've kind of turned my stuff off coaching-wise so that I can grow my brand whilst also growing our other business, which is hers, which is a completely new dynamic. So essentially it's very kind of different. But again, same thing happens here where ultimately even though it's her brand, it's bringing the most cash into our company right now, which is kind of not the ideal situation for polarity in the relationship. I'm stepping up in all of these other ways to give her that safety. And at the start, it was challenging. So, but yeah, it's not an easy thing to do. But I think once you understand this stuff and then start to apply it and non-reactive to the person, that's kind of what we've done.
Yeah. So what exactly are you putting in place to be more in that masculine?
Well, for starters, I'm much more heavily into the business. So she's allowing me to, obviously her business is in Italian. So I don't speak Italian, I know a little bit. But up until a few months ago, I wasn't as much in her business. She has another team in Italy. And it's only been the last couple of months since we're kind of realizing, the polarity's kind of gone a little bit here. Like we're fighting a bit more. And I called her out on it and said, this is like, I don't like the way you're speaking to me. This. It's not who you are. And we realized this is the reason why. So I said, great, okay, I'm going to help you with this. We're going to do that. So I mean, that's why I'm doing all of her business needed it anyway. But my ego, like it was tough transitioning to close my thing down. If that makes sense.
Absolutely. And what I'm hearing here as well is that you were to set boundaries to make it work.
Yeah, setting boundaries, communicating, navigating stuff with the child and all those other things involved as well. But to answer your question with a bit more clarity, it's just me like this again. In the transition, I've now got the podcast. That's my purpose. Yeah. In terms of doing what I say I'm going to do, I'm good with that. And in terms of really being that masculine leader, she still allows me to lead in the business. I'm the CEO. Even though it's her brand, I'm handling all of whether we're doing photo shoots, whether we're speaking with press companies, I'm handling the direction of the business, even though it's her brand, if that makes sense. Yep. But she had to allow that.
Yes.
So that's where the allowing coming in. I'm not like, she's not submitting to me. Ultimately, it's her brand, but we'll communicate about it. But she trusts me. I've got, obviously, this is my area of expertise. But
it's almost like she'll allow you to make the final decision once it's been discussed.
Yeah. It's definitely she's allowing me to play a large role in it, and I mean, I probably resisted that initially because I didn't want to, because I was doing my thing and she was doing her thing. But now, definitely since then, the relationship was still good, but now it's like amazing again. So I think relationships going to, they're going to ebb and flow, and a lot of the times it's always, the polarity of the relationship. And I think that's the most important thing, is realizing that.
I think so.
Yeah.
And you did mention, like, when she is more in her masculine, that you naturally go a little bit more into your feminine.
I used to. Not so much anymore, because I've done a lot of healing, and that's why I would go into that feminine, because there was like still a lot of pain in my heart. Since I've done a lot of healing on that, I don't go to that pain anymore. I'm able to just stand as that rock. When she's a wave and she's crashing, I'm just a sturdy rock. So that's for my daughter, as you would have seen me putting in a pram before. And so I'm rock fucking solid now. So that's what allows her to feel safe, which has then allowed her to let me in, and rather than feeling like, oh, Scott's going to take over the business. Now she's allowing me more in, because I've shown her that I'm rock solid over and over and over again.
Yeah, that's important.
And then now, because I'm both got the podcast, which is the purpose stuff, as well as,
I think it's important to note that it is okay as well. Like, so before you did all of this healing work, relationships as a whole, you want that balance.
Yeah.
So if one partner's swinging one way, one partner's going to adjust to create the polarity. But I do think it is that level of awareness. So you've done the healing work and you've become aware of these poles working together, and then you've just decided that I'm going to be in the masculine pole, and then that allows her. Because I think what's important is a man can encourage a woman to be in her feminine, but a female cannot encourage a man to be in his masculine by being feminine.
He'll just feel. I think whenever I've seen a woman do that, it just completely emasculates a man. You're not masculine enough. Boom, like it's over.
It's not the way to deal with it at all. We don't want to emasculate the man. It's sort of like a self-responsibility for the male to work on his masculine energy, because that's what's ultimately going to lead the relationship to this beautiful polarity.
Yeah. I think for me, the key thing is just, number one, understanding how this all works. And it's not that you have to be in perfect polarity all the time. It's I think you shared before, it's just an awareness thing. But the only way to have the awareness is have the education first. Then you can utilize that awareness of going, okay, instead of judging where things are at sometimes, it's just like going, okay, cool, do my little checklist. Am I call it the 4 Ps of presence, purpose. I haven't said this one for a while. Presence, purpose, protection, and I forgot my fourth P: purpose, presence, protection, and provision. Yeah.
That's nice.
So the challenging one at the moment is, yes, we've got a company together, but technically her brand is making more than mine. And for me, that, like, I'm a pretty conscious person, but for my ego, that was challenging to, like, would just go back and go, because I could just go back and start selling clients and doing different things again. But then when I was in that, I wasn't able to be as present, because I had a very stressful kind of business. So, like, I made the decision to shut that down, to play the long game. But that meant in the short interim that the dynamic in the relationship kind of changed. So
how did you manage getting through that?
Well, yeah, it was just all the things I mentioned before: conscious conversations, not avoiding conversations, having fights sometimes. Also, holding that boundary when I felt as though when she might have been more in her masculine, not allowing certain behaviours that I didn't think were healthy. And that alone in itself, as I was just having I do still have a couple of clients I speak to, and I was having the same discussion with a client the other day, and I was saying that, nobody likes boundaries when you set them, but it's so important, and a woman will respect you for it, because you're showing that you're strong mentally, that you're not going to budge on certain things. I heard again Teal Swan say that and a lot of people might disagree with this, but this is something that I truly believe. If leaving isn't on something that's on the table, then people like, because you need that hard thing of like, this is the boundary, otherwise I'm out of here type thing. I don't think people should just be quitting on their relationships. But I think that has to be on the table if certain behaviors are you don't want them to be there, if that makes sense.
I think so. I think it's learning what you will and won't tolerate.
Yes.
And a masculine leader's setting a boundary and then enforcing it.
In a healthy way. In a healthy way. And my wife does the same thing to me. Like, I'm not a freaking perfect person. There's been plenty of times where she's called me out and I'm like, fuck. Yeah, I need to step up my game here. But I think the key is that we both, it goes back to that goal. We both have a goal of wanting to be a great partner. But also knowing that to do that, I as a man need to have, I can't be the goody guy that's just wanting to, wait on my wife's, hand and foot like the old me might have when I was much younger and just trying to be the nice guy. It's how I do that by now is by taking action, by living on my purpose, by giving her presents. It's not the things that I say I'm going to do, and it's like what I'm actually doing. Am I moving forwards? So anyways, enough about me. So going back to you, we spoke about healthy masculine, unhealthy masculine, healthy feminine, unhealthy feminine. What around the unhealthy feminine stuff? Why do you so the consensus, the conversation was that's usually comes because of society and also comes because she's not feeling safe with a man. That was kind of the crux of it, right?
Yeah, it is, I guess, influence. When it comes to this, society is depicting women in a way, but also a woman when she is a child, her role model is her mother, is the feminine energy. So it's, I guess, the influence or the exposure or the awareness she's had to what appears to be a feminine figure. Yeah. And women are modeling this strong, independent boss babe. Yeah. So, for instance, growing up, I guess it starts from day dot, right? I was born into a family with 2 plastic surgeons as parents.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, my mum went back to work 11 months after having kids. So
after having you. Yeah. So you're 11 months old. She's gone back to, you say work? Yep. So she's a doctor. So she's gone back into work. So my influence of a feminine is strong, independent. Yeah. And goals, kicking ass and taking names and that type of thing.
Yeah, achievement. And I guess I internalize that as worth is tied into achievement.
Yeah, gotcha.
And I think that is a big struggle or a big belief behind why feminism is a thing, because it's no longer enough for women to just be a wife and mum. It's like they feel like they need to prove that they can do what a man can do.
Yeah, gotcha.
And it's not so much now about playing to your strengths. It's about trying to be like a man.
Yeah, gotcha. And so, like, what was, if you had to go back into your story, what's been your journey? Because obviously you sound like you started out into, and that's how I came across you in that post of like, I used to be a feminist and now I'm into feminism. And like, what's been your kind of journey from seeing that mother in that way, seeing the agendas portrayed in society, and then what you started to, like, what's been your journey along that? Were you always really goal-driven in school? What were you like in school? Were you academic like your mum or?
Yeah, very driven to achieve in terms of grades and academics, and like I was quite intelligent, but I was also very, very applied. Yeah. Because I felt like I had to do more. Yes. And then even, I guess, after school, it came the choice of going to university, which I don't think I was ready to decide. But I remember watching Suits and actually really enjoying the whole concept of like this boss women in suits, of like just hustling.
Which is
hard.
the woman who's the owner of the company. She's she's over the top of Harvey Specter.
Yeah, so I actually enrolled in law school. I lasted about 6 months until I realized like the application of it. But that just goes to show like what I idealized.
Yes.
And
you feel like you were doing that because that's what you saw that you need to do. And that, like, that's like the ideology of this is what a successful woman looks like.
yeah,
Is like boss babe, making cash, independent, powerful, doesn't need a man. And then you did law school. Like what happened next?
yeah. So I didn't stay in law school, or I didn't pursue.
Well, that's
a
pretty
career.
amazing just to even get into law school because it's tough. Like that
you.
shows in a certain application and intelligence to be able to do that.
Yeah, the grades were there. I realized it was a lot of work, and I wasn't, willing to be buried in paperwork my whole life. But I still sort of pursued that anyway. In terms of my other endeavors, I ended up doing marketing, and I've always had a bit of an entrepreneurial mindset. So always starting businesses, but I would just work so hard, like 10-hour days. And I think what is important to understand is that this like working hard or like career driven is on a cycle of 24 hours, which is a very masculine cycle because women actually go on a cycle of 28 days.
And this is being a man and not being an expert at this, but 28 days, are you talking that because that's a menstrual cycle? Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So we sort of operate in terms of a month. So in the workplace, it's like 24 hours a day is a man can consistently hit that with the same level of productivity. But a woman, in a 28-day cycle, she's probably got a week of the similar productivity.
Is that because her hormones are going through different waves and at different stages, she's going to have different energy levels?
Absolutely.
Be in different like mental states or mental states probably not the right word, but like just going through different stages.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And she's going to be more applied in certain periods where her hormones are at the optimal level. So I think that's important to consider when we look at why women get burnt out. But that brings me back to, I pushed on this cycle of daily hustle, daily grind. And
what were the impacts of that? If you're trying to, you're not aware of this 28-day cycle at the time? Not aware. So you're trying to do a 24-hour cycle every day, put out the same input, and then what? Certain parts of the month you felt horrible and you felt like you couldn't win. You felt like, what was that? What was that? What did that feel like? Or what was the impact?
Just overall, it was like, I guess, hustling for however long. So I went to school, I went to uni, I got a job, and I was working. And it was just like, it got to the point of burnout. I was exhausted. I was depleted. I had nothing left to give because I had no awareness of feminine energy and being receptive. So I never stopped. Right. I was like this really hyper independent person and I was like constantly people pleasing. So it was constantly in overdrive until a point I was just like, I was burnt out.
Some people would say, by the way, again, just to play devil's advocate, they would say, well, that's just the price that you pay to be, successful in achieving things. Do you think that it's do you think that for men that, like, cause for instance, like men also burn out, men also could probably relate to some of the things that you just shared, overworking, burnout. What do you feel is the different kind of the difference maker between why it's not good for a woman besides the knowledge or like the factual side of things? Do you think like a woman gets more tired, or do you think it's like, what are your thoughts on that?
I think she's not recharging. I think, being nurturing and soft and kind and gentle and being this like healthy feminine is recharging for a woman. Like she can say, for example, nurture a child is going to actually give her more energy. Whereas when she's working, she's just depleting.
So what I'm hearing from what you're saying is it's not that women, like men and women both are going to have similar challenges in the fact that if you work lots, you're going to burn out. But for a man, working hard is almost a part of his masculine essence. So he's in his natural course. When we were talking about before, like healthy masculine is like achieving and doing things. Whereas for a woman, it's more receivership. So it's more that she's not following her own energy flows. And so that then can create some other issues hormonally, can't it too, as well?
Yeah. I'm sure it can. I'm not too well versed in that area, but it is acting from a disconnect of who she actually is.
So you can imagine if she's doing that, it's going to be very challenging to then turn, if she's not in the flow of the natural core essence, then you can imagine, and following her cycle and all those types of things, you can imagine that would make it much more challenging to hold down a relationship, because she's going to be predominantly not just in her masculine, but in a very fatigued, probably more so unhealthy version of the masculine.
Yeah, and that's what I experienced, because I was in a relationship at the time when I was doing this, and I had no awareness of masculine, feminine dynamics. So the way that I approached my relationship was not in a feminine way. It was more in a masculine way, but the way that presented was like mothering. Like I would sort of feel the need to look after the man I was with, look after the household, and in turn that I was actually like, I was quite resentful. Like I have to work this much time in a day. I'm bringing in my own income, and then I'm coming home and I'm cooking and cleaning and doing all of these things.
I think you're speaking to so many women right now that are listening to this.
Yeah.
So you, like, how did that, like, do you think that was a result of your partner, or do you think that was because you were creating that mothering?
I was definitely creating that. But at the same time, it was like he almost needed to be mothered. So, you know, had he taken accountability, then I wouldn't have needed to do that. It sort of comes back to, if the man's not going to wear the pants, and the woman will, just by default.
By default.
Yeah, but also I had no awareness, so I can't say that it was his fault, because at the same time I was very masculine in work and in home. So I definitely played a role in that dynamic. But had he had awareness and changed more into a healthy masculine, I would have been receptive to that.
Yeah. So it's really both people's responsibility, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's not like that there's okay, gotcha. Okay, so parents were both plastic surgeons. Your mum, you learnt from your mum, like, this is how to be a woman. You didn't have any other instances. You went through life, and at some point after law school, leaving that and going into marketing, but still being in that kind of more alpha, taking action energy, that you then bring that home into your relationship. You're starting to notice that this is not helping the relationship, and then what then happened from there to bring you to this place where now you're putting out videos saying, hey, I used to be this way, now I'm this. What was it, one thing, or was it lots of little things that then ended up getting you to a place of going, this isn't healthy for me, and I'm looking, like, prior to figuring things out, like, were you looking for answers, or were you just slowly like collecting data? Like, what was the process of that? Because there might be some women out there that are watching this and going, I'm triggered by a few things she says, but at the same time, I do have some of the symptoms. Like, I'm not having intimacy in my relationship. I'm constantly nagging my husband. Maybe, just maybe, I can take some responsibility for it as well. And I can start to have some conscious conversations with him or whatever. At least I can take my responsibility. What was that like? What things were you thinking in your mind, being back when you were more like feminist superhero women's in the movies and, you know, all that kind of charge, versus now being much more softer? And what was that transition like for you?
It was more like an inability to rest is what it was. So it was like this actual need to keep going, and I felt guilty for resting.
Yes.
So there was a lot of healing that had to take place, because when the relationship ended, I walked away for reasons beyond the dynamic.
Yeah.
I decided to take a break from my business.
Yes.
Just while I did my own healing work, and I said I'm going to take 2 weeks, and that turned into 4 months.
Amazing. So those are some of the symptoms, but what was were you witnessing yourself changing? Your views is what I'm saying.
When I took the break, when I stopped,
when you slowed down and softened,
when I stopped to rest and said, I'm just going to focus on my healing.
Yeah.
Rather than continue, because I remember being days after the breakup, like, I've got to put a post on Instagram.
Yeah.
I was not in a headspace to be writing and producing content for other people. So it was like, when I stopped to rest, I was like, this is actually really nice. And it slowly was like, oh, I'm not as stressed, and it came through in actually doing it.
So it was much more organic. It wasn't like you read a book and an idea came. That probably laid the bedrock for the conscious stuff for when you slowed down. But when you slowed down, you just naturally entered back into more of that feminine energy, and then you're like, oh, this is cool. This feels nice.
It was more so that I was so burnt out that I needed to rest.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, oh, I'm being feminine, because that actually didn't happen until I met a healthy masculine.
Gotcha. So you didn't learn it and then consciously choose it.
No.
You burnt out you through burning out, you took some rest, and then through that rest, you gained you started to gain more awareness of what was working, what wasn't working.
Through the rest, I started to actually enjoy it and realize this is what life can be like. I can actually sit back and there's not this external pressure.
I'm actually enjoying not working so hard.
I'm actually enjoying not working so hard.
Why do I put so much pressure on myself to be that version of myself? Was that kind of the thinking?
That was absolutely it. It was like, what nothing is urgent. Why do I have this level of urgency? It needs to be done right now. I'm like, I've just like walked away from a 6-year relationship and I'm here like I need to post on Instagram. Hang on, the business will still be there when I'm ready. So it was like, wow, it's really nice just to be. And I remember spending like there was like 7 consecutive days I was actually actively healing the relationship and using my processes to work through a lot of this stuff. And it was just like, you don't know how much is built up until you stop and slow down. And I just remember being like, this is actually really beneficial for me. And that was, I guess, the lead into being more feminine.
Yeah.
Because around that time, I started to learn more about feminine energy.
Yeah.
And that's where like the cycle stuff comes in. I think I came across this like cycle sync your business. So allowing yourself to work with the 28-day cycle in a way that's just as productive, but more supportive to the feminine frame.
Yeah. So it's because I do, my wife does a lot of this stuff as well. She's obviously a coach and things like that. So she taught me, to also follow, obviously not a woman, so I don't have to follow a cycle, but more my human design, understanding how my energy system works, which is essentially what you're saying when you're talking about a woman's cycle. It's her, part of her energy system. So you started to naturally, because you had space, you started to naturally, you were learning more, and then you were just gently applying some of these things and figuring it out as you went, kind of thing.
Figuring it out and like learning about the stuff sort of enabled me to, not feel guilty while resting. Like that was something that, working so hard.
That's a very masculine trait, to feel guilty when you're not working.
Yeah. So that was something I had to unpack, because over time I'd built so many masculine traits because I learned from my mother to that feminine, like a female was masculine. So that was just, I had to, a lot of my programming was, or a lot of my healing was deprogramming me being masculine.
Yes, gotcha.
Yeah.
Which I can imagine takes a little bit of time.
It takes awareness and commitment. It helps, obviously, that I have the processes.
Yes.
So with awareness, I was able to create change pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So, this is all within the last 6 months.
And obviously, I mean, what's interesting for me is it's obviously been life-changing for you, you to want to go out and start to work with people to help. I mean, a lot of, if you ask any coach or even any psychologist or anyone, people typically, the reason what motivates them to want to help people is that they've overcome something within their own life, and they just feel like, oh, I wish someone had helped me. And so then we want to go and help the old version of us. So you're technically like almost helping the old ex-partner that didn't know how to be a man or didn't know how to be the container for his woman, because you work with men, correct?
Yes. So
and you also work with women?
More so men. No.
More so the men.
But the transition for me has been like very masculine to feminine. And me enabling or allowing myself to be a female has been so rewarding, because it's like just coming back to my natural essence. It's been
for a lot of the women who or any women that are watching this, what would you say to them? Like, if you were to speak to them and they're like, they either just don't agree with you, or maybe they're just they're struggling to either hold a partner down, have a healthy relationship, or they're just burnt out and all those types of things. Like, what sort of advice would you give to them?
Figure out what you want, what you want in your business and in your relationship, because you might want to lead in your business or your work, but in your relationship, do you really want to lead, or would you prefer that a man takes that weight from you? So it's like, where do you actually want to be? And there's so much resistance because we are taught to be a certain way. So it's like, at your core, what do you want, without taking into account what other people have said to you?
So challenge so really step one, slow down first. That sounds like that's like
Slow down.
so that you can actually at least like witness if there's any pre-programming kind of in there or pre-tendencies or biases.
Yeah.
So slow down, and then step two is you were just sharing like
it's like explore why you do certain things.
Yes, have a look at the reason why you want to. So step two would be like, okay, cool, I want to have a business. Cool, okay, but does that support the relationship? What do I want in a relationship? How do I want to feel? All these types of things. And then once you figure out what you want, challenge that. Why do I want that? Is that the reason why I want it is because of I've been programmed to want that? Or is it because that will help me thrive? I think thrive is like my favorite word because it's like sometimes I want my ego or my mind wants something, but then I ask myself, is this really going to help my relationship thrive? Not really. Or what's my core values? Business, relationship, freedom. Okay, cool. So I want this thing, but it doesn't actually add value to the things that I really care about. Well, then why do I want it? Oh, and that's when I can notice, okay, it's because I feel like I need this to get that or something of that nature.
That's a really valuable distinction.
Yeah. So, okay, cool. So slow down, like set some goals about what you want, challenge those goals to see if they are actually for your best or if they're actually programmed or society or ego.
As well as goals, habits. Analyze your habits. Why are you doing certain things?
Yeah.
You know, like if I look back, why am I working 6-7 days a week? For what purpose? And like you said, is it an ego thing or is it because I want to?
What was it for you?
It was a need to prove myself. It was this like, I thought my worth was tied to my achievement.
Yes.
So I sort of had to slowly understand that my worth, I had to find self-worth within myself regardless of external.
Just for being a woman, not
just for being a woman.
Just for being yourself.
And I had to learn about what it meant to be a woman and to actually learn to embrace and accept that, because for so long I feel like I rejected that idea. So yeah, it comes down to understanding what it is and being okay with that and being in allowance of that.
Yeah.
And that's the same for men, is like understanding what it means to be a man and then leaning into that. I think playing to your strengths is really, really important.
Yeah.
And that's sort of why I do the work that I do, is because from, you know, being quite masculine to being quite feminine, I can see that leaning into myself and just allowing it as I am, not fighting against it, there's a lot more ease. Yeah. So with the work that I do with men, it's like encouraging them to lean into that, find a lot more ease. And then as a result, they have that impact on women.
Yes.
So it's like I'm helping women achieve the result that I had, but I'm helping them through men, because like I said, men have an ability to allow women to be more feminine by holding that masculine
so instead
frame.
of going to the women and saying, hey, this is how you become feminine, the realization is what you shared with me before, which is that when the man becomes more masculine, it's much easier for her to relax into feminine because she feels safe to.
Absolutely. And that's what happened for me. That was the trigger of when it all came together, was meeting a healthy masculine man.
Yes.
Because I was quite masculine when I met him. So I was challenged against like, this is not normal.
And did he set boundaries? Obviously, if he's a healthy masculine, I'm sure he was able to communicate that to you. Did you guys talk about did you guys consciously communicate about certain things, or did he hold certain boundaries? You're like, whoa, yeah, maybe I am a bit masculine in this particular area, or maybe I could be more.
Yeah. So there was actually a scenario when I went down to meet him. We're a little bit long distance.
Yeah.
And I remember getting triggered by something, and I defaulted to my like closed and guarded, very masculine. Like it was like a spikiness of don't come near me.
Yeah, don't fuck with me.
Don't fuck with me. And he felt that, right? Like he knew, because he was emotionally aware.
Yeah.
And we weren't able to address it because we went out to dinner and stuff. And then the next day, we saw each other again, and he goes, oh, can I be honest with you? And I was like, yeah, sure, no worries.
Not too honest.
Not too honest. It was, I'm sick of your shit energy.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, okay, no one's really pulled me in line for my energy. But instead of leaving it at that, he was like, okay, let's do something about it. You're going to lay down and you're going to do an hour breath work.
Yeah.
So he actually guided me through a breath work to allow me to like work through the emotions that were there. And like that leadership allowed me to like be soft, because I let go of all this like spikiness. And after that, I was like,
what am I doing?
I was just so relaxed into my feminine, and like I saw the change in dynamic. It's like we were able to get along, we were able to connect, we were able to be a working team.
Yeah.
And that was, him communicating and taking the lead on that. And that wasn't.
Do you find, just a quick question, he was obviously very forward with the way that his energy when he said there's quite, I wouldn't say, it's not nasty, but it is slightly more on the aggressive, potent
it was
side.
direct.
Very direct. And there's definitely like a punch in it.
Yes.
By the way, I've done that before as well. And I think sometimes Tony Robbins is really good at this, like pattern interrupt. And it's very easy to play for all of us to play a victim sometimes. And when somebody does that powerful kind of pattern interrupt type of energy, like, hey, like this is not fucking acceptable. You might say, if we're trying to just all be nice and flowery to everybody, you're not going to get that pattern interrupt. You're going to get manipulated.
Yeah.
And so did you find that energy that he brought, you were like, whoa, I actually need to check myself? Or did you, like, does that make sense? Like, that's the kind of pit that I focused on there, because I think a lot of men are just trying to not spark any arguments, but he's kind of gone, well, like, asked you for permission, but then he hasn't gone in lightly. He's gone in with like a,
this is shit.
Like,
they're not acceptable.
Like, this is not. So he's really held us very strong boundary, and that's taken you by off guard.
Yeah. I was shocked. I did not expect it.
In reflection now, do you think there was a part of you that actually felt like, whoa, this guy, like, I don't know what the word is, but it's like, this guy's not fucking around. I need to, like,
almost like it.
Did you respect him more? Because this is the thing that I think most people don't understand. That I'm not saying for men to go around, don't be abusive, like that's not acceptable. No. But when you're playing this soft, pussy ass kind of energy, sorry for my kind of language, but that doesn't work. No. Like sometimes, like I call it love and leadership. Sometimes you need to give that loving nature, but sometimes you need to hold a very strong stance. And what that does, it makes the woman typically feel like, wow, this is a strong man, and a strong man can protect me. It might not be consciously what she wants, and in some parts of her will think, is this okay? Is this not okay? And like, everyone told me that a man shouldn't raise his voice at me and all these, like, if you're going through this whole matrix of things, but on a primal level, she'll respect him because he's showing strength. Was that, if you're in reflection, I'm kind of loading this up for you a little bit here, but do you agree? Do you disagree? Because a lot of people would say, no, it's not okay for a man to raise his voice.
I really value that he did that.
Yeah.
And at the time, it took me off guard. But in retrospect, I respect him setting that boundary and enforcing it literally, like, we're going to do breath work. And it wasn't like, we're doing this. It was like, are you okay too? Yeah,
you're just paraphrasing now for the purpose of the podcast.
And it's like this leadership, but it comes from a place of love. It's a loving leader.
And I think that's the most important part is, this guy isn't just coming out of fucking woodworks. It's not a Tinder date.
No,
this is someone you've already spent time with. You already feel safe with. If you're an abusive freaking asshole and you say the same thing, right, you shut up. And
that's like, not first date energy.
Like, that's not, this is someone who you've built a loving trust with. So when they say, hey, this is not cool, you trust that they're not just being manipulative, they're not being abusive,
absolutely.
Which we're certainly not going to condone that type of behavior. But you realize maybe he's right. And the fact that this is a calm, loving man, he's got equity in the relationship. If he does spark up, you know that there must, you've
I'm
obviously.
I'm pushing it.
Yeah, and that's going back to the testing piece. He's like, he's proven the point that he can get upset and hold a boundary without being reactive, nasty, abusive. Which is, again, going back to that primal thing of, okay, cool, this is someone who's safe to have a child with. Not saying that you have to have a child with him. But, yeah, that's so interesting. So that was like a turning point for you. We're like, this is what a safe masculine can feel like. It can feel powerful, but it can also feel safe.
It was powerful, but also that experience then immediately on the other side, it was like I was proven that I could trust him because the immediate shift in dynamic, I knew I was like a bit shit before.
Yeah.
And then after that, I was just so much like softer and gentler and like relaxed. And I come back into this like relief of like, it's okay just to like receive that lead. So it was like an immediate like.
Because he stepped into the leadership role.
He stepped into leadership. And I
as
saw
opposed
the
to being
benefit.
passive and just complaining about you and then avoiding you.
He could have, yes, he could have
He
just
could have
walked
just said,
away
this chick is nuts. This whole long distance thing isn't fucking working. All women are crazy.
She's going to ruin my night.
She's going to ruin my night. All of the suki la la complaints that
that a passive man or a feminine man may do.
Or a feminine man can do, complaining rather than taking the lead. But so very interesting. So this is proving a really powerful point. So that's the first time, and then this happened. I mean, obviously, you didn't just become the feminine woman overnight. This happened again and again, a few times, I would imagine, until.
So that happened, and then the next time I went to go see him. So that first time I had gone down to visit him, but I had stayed separate in an Airbnb. So this all happened like separately.
Yep.
The second time I went to go see him, he said, you're welcome to stay at my place. And I immediately was like uncomfortable with that, right? And I communicated that with him, and he was like, well, why is it? And we sort of like investigated why it was uncomfortable, and it came down to like, he's like, I just don't think that you're comfortable around like healthy masculinity, right? So I took accountability for that.
So he called you out again.
He called me out again. He was like, do you mind if I ask some questions? And he's got an NLP background. So his questioning is strategic. And we did get down to a root cause. And it was basically daddy issues was the root cause. I remember like laughing, being like, it's not daddy issues. He's like, you're laughing because it's true. And I'm like, yeah. So after that, I actually, that was a phone call we had. And I said, I'll get back to you. So you felt,
sorry, just to quickly point, so you felt what, like rebellious towards the masculine because of your father? Or you felt hurt, so you like some of the things that I've seen is when a woman feels hurt with the masculine in some way, then all men feel unsafe. It's not like this man; it's all men. And then there's usually like some sort of putting down or some sort of emasculating or just different types of traits to take control of the situation. Because if I'm in control, I feel safe. Yep,
that's true. And that was actually what came up for me was like, well, if I stay separate at an Airbnb, then I have control over when I can remove myself if I'm uncomfortable, overwhelmed.
Which is I mean, that's fair enough. How far into the relationship were you?
A few months. Like I trusted him at this point that he wasn't a serial killer.
Yes, yeah.
But what actually happened after that, and this answers your question, was I reflected after we came to the point that maybe there was some daddy issues there. It was like, okay, I reflected on my relationship with my father, but extending that to actually what's my relationship with the masculine as a whole. And there was a lot of stuff. Like there was hurt, betrayal, mistrust, anger, resentment, grudges, like a loaded yucky emotions.
Well done on actually being open and conscious and taking responsibility, because like, I mean, it's tough to look in the mirror and go, okay, I'm part of the problem, and wow, here's this plethora of stuff. But the cool thing is when you take ownership, you can instead of it being everyone else's fault, it's like I can work on these things. And you've done a bunch of healing now to heal some of those wounds.
So, well, like being a theta healer, I was able to knock that out in a night.
Wow.
So by the next day, I was like, okay, I reflected and.
By the way, what does that mean? I didn't know. Theta.
Theta.
Sorry, I thought you were talking about like a theatre.
Oh no!
I was thinking theatre here. I've never seen that. It's like a theatre. Yeah. So theta waves is the hypnotic state that we go into after waking up and just before bed, right? As we're about to drift off, and we can tap into the subconscious mind.
Yep. So theta healing or theta is we do healings, but we work in the subconscious mind in that realm of theta. So when I work with a client, I'll actually put them into a theta brainwave.
Which is 10 times strong because you're not resisting the conscious mind, which is like trying to logicalize and figure everything out. You're going straight into...
you skip it and you can find beliefs and it creates the modality. You can create instantaneous belief changes. Wow. So not only can you find the issue really easily because you're not thinking about it, you're just allowing whatever comes up to come up. Yeah. You can change it instantly at a subconscious level at the root. And then the changes done.
Yeah, as opposed to fixing 50,000 symptoms, you go straight to the source, not the symptoms. And the source for you was relationship with the masculine, feeling unsafe, and specifically some stuff that had happened, or not necessarily happened, but just your relationship with your father.
Yeah, that was it.
In the crux of it.
Yeah, and that was it. And it was just a lot of forgiveness, really. It was like, okay, I understand that this is coming out now in my...
I wanted this and I got this, and the gap made me feel unsafe in short.
Yeah. And then it was like, come to terms with this, and then just like I had to relearn to trust the masculine, and that was like at a subconscious level of like, let's let go of this like mistrust in her. And as soon as I sort of resolved that by forgiving what had happened in the past or my experiences in the past, I was then open to trusting him. So the next day I was like, I can stay at yours.
Yeah. So so basically the more that you allowed yourself to or have what I call disconfirming experiences. So the confirming experiences when I have a negative belief, and then you know, a lot of times people, just because they don't trust that and they're not trying to grow, they just don't put themselves in the situation. So you're consciously going, well, this is something I need to work on. And so you did that. And each time you realized, oh, I can be safe. Let me push myself again. Oh, I can be safe with the mass. And so obviously it does make a difference who you do this with. Not saying that you should do this with every single man. Choose a man that, you know, is actually a healthy masculine. In a healthy masculine.
Yeah, because you're going to feel a lot safer to soften if he's in a healthy masculine.
He's going to provide a safe container. It's very, at least one person needs to be conscious at any given time. Sometimes it can be the woman, sometimes it can be the man, but yeah, that's a whole nother, that's the whole thing. That's really cool. So okay, we gave some tips to the women before, which is, you know, all the things you shared about find the right man, you know, slowing down, doing some probably more feminine activities.
Yes.
Having goals and reviewing things. Actually, quickly before we go into the men's stuff, what are a couple of activities that you do and do you agree with what I was saying about my wife? Do you do things when you're, say, doing more masculine activities? Do you try to balance that out by consciously doing feminine activities to drop back into that, to support you getting to that?
Yeah, this was actually when I was going through the rest period and also like starting this relationship. We were having conversations about masculine, feminine dynamics. He was actually sort of coaching me to do more feminine stuff. And he's like, do you like dancing? And I was like, no, not at all. He's like, great, go do some dancing.
Yes.
And I remember being like, wait, what? And I actually did go to a dance.
My wife also does dancing. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a feminine thing.
It's moving your body. It's getting out of the head and into the body. Moving in a feminine way rather than being stiff and staunch, which is more of a masculine, physical approach. Awesome. So dancing, what other things do you do or have you done, or do you sign off on?
Cooking, being creative in the kitchen. I think anything creative. Yeah. So like, because you could just switch off and allow yourself to like create something delicious, put things together and experiment and try. And that for me is very feminine because it's sort of flowing.
And just for like listener's sake, these are things that you didn't do before. You didn't cook. You weren't in you. I mean, you obviously did marketing, which is a creative job.
I used to cook, but I cooked from the place of
I have to
put food on the table, and then it's like I started cooking for the sake of I just want to enjoy it, and I just want to enjoy myself, and there wasn't that like annoyance behind having to do it or resentment around doing it. It just became like an activity that I did because I wanted to, and that distinction was allowing me to just enjoy it.
And this all came because you, going back to your point about having a goal, you had a goal of realizing that being in your masculine wasn't serving your own happiness, health, relationships, and business.
Correct.
So you had a goal of wanting to be more feminine. And so you started to almost seek out and explore a different, more feminine activities and be mindful of how much you were spending in your masculine.
Correct.
Exactly. Awesome. Yeah. Hopefully if I've got it, the other guys have got it too. So masculine, what is, you obviously work with men, so we spoke about the women. Last thing, we'll kind of, we'll wrap this up. So for the men, talk to the camera. Pick it. That's your camera right there. What do you want to tell them? What do they need to do in order to have a relationship? Number one, thrive as a man, because the point of the podcast is to make men great again. And again, for me, that means you'll be a better father, husband, leader, which helps society and helps women and kids. Absolutely. So what do they need to really thrive as a man? And second question, what do they need to do to thrive in a relationship with their partner so that their partner can soften and then the man can receive what he really wants, which is love, intimacy, and more of a nurturing essence rather. Not mothering, but just not nagging. That kind of loving. Nurturing.
They want a soft and loving relationship.
I think the word soft, you've used that a bit. So that more soft and loving relationship. So one, what do men need to do to thrive? Two, what do they need to do to thrive in the relationship?
Well, what they do for themselves is going to help their relationship.
Yeah.
So figure out what you want.
Yeah.
Like seriously get clear on what you want.
Yeah.
Get clear on who you are. So this is actually going inside and figuring it out for yourself.
Yes.
Not you don't want to do a career because someone told you to. Figure out what you want.
What do you actually care about?
What do you actually value? Who are you at your core?
What do you believe in?
What do you believe in? And
values.
Then it's like this confidence and self-esteem, and start believing in yourself and have the confidence in yourself and who you are, and also the confidence to communicate what you want.
And so a lot of guys will say, well, yeah, that's great. That's what I need to do. But how the fuck do I do that? Like how I'm not confident. I'm anxious. I'm stressed. I didn't have a good masculine role model, and I don't know how to, I know what I need to do. I just don't know how to do it.
Start processing your emotions.
Yeah.
So
and doing the healing on the wounds.
Because, if you're struggling with confidence, there's going to be a reason why. What's the emotion? How does that make you feel that you're not confident?
Yeah.
And then when you get to an emotion and you can go
By the way, that's really what did you just say then? What was the
How does that make you
How does it make you feel that you're not confident?
You're not
that's
confident.
just like I even squirmed then.
That's a pause right there for like.
Yeah, hold on. Yeah, because that shit's fucking uncomfortable.
That's uncomfortable. Yeah, it is. And this work isn't comfortable, but for long-term growth, you do have to be willing to get uncomfortable.
So short-term sacrifice, long-term gain. And I think...
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So be willing to face the fact that there's reasons why you're not. Be willing to do the fucking work to do that.
Yeah.
And so that comes into the healing. So whether it's theta work, whether it's breath work, we've talked about this in length on other podcasts. We don't have to go into all the tools type of list, but the point you're making is heal your wounds, because you should naturally just be like confident in who you are, and then you'll be able to have those, work on those goals as opposed to just feeling like you're not. What else? So heal. That's for and then get clear on who you want to be, what do you want to do, and then fucking do it.
Pretty much. Set goals, and also like while you're at the point of sorting out your inner state, your emotional state, like just prioritize your health, get on top of your physical health.
Yeah. So just go back to basics.
Go back to basics. Eat well. Get sunlight.
Yeah.
Exercise.
And if you can't do that because you're addicted to things or you're anxious, you're stressed all the time, that just goes back to the fact that like that's not normal. Like you should, that's because there's some healing that needs to be done.
There's some healing that needs to be done. And I work a lot with men that have addictions and alcohol, drugs, pornography are all quite valid things that men struggle with. There's reasons why. So when you start doing the healing work around why you have these habits,
why you do what you do,
then you automatically, these habits are going to fall away and you're going to start to build healthier ones. So if you've tried to start an exercise habit and going to the gym and you're failing to do that because you're leaning on alcohol or drugs, then resolving the alcohol and drugs issue is going to allow you to shift into this habit, this new desired way of living.
Yes.
So it's correlated. You can set the goal, but sometimes it's hard to achieve the goal because there's subconscious stuff in the way. Yeah. So if it's not working
and stuff it's not, under the surface that you're not aware of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if it's not as simple as a decision, go do it, then what's in the way?
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. So that's for them. What about in relationships? What are the key biggest problems that you see in society with men? And what do you think that that men should be doing about it if they were to take responsibility? Obviously, besides the fact that if you make yourself great within yourself, that's going to solve 90% of your problems, isn't it? Because you're going to become a healthy masculine man that's going to create safety for the woman. And then she's going to not bust your balls as much, which means then you're going to be happier in love and all those types of things. But is there any specific things if a woman is nagging or if intimacy isn't there? Are there any things that a man can do with a woman, or is it just purely doing the stuff himself?
Great. Yeah, great question. So I think that there are 3 things that form the foundation of a really strong relationship. That is communication. Like talk about stuff when it's coming up. If she's nagging you, talk about it, and don't be afraid that it's going to escalate. It's like you need to be able to have conversations even if they are uncomfortable. This comes back to the big...
Breathe, motherfucker, breathe. Just have the conversation. Don't avoid it. Don't do the happy wife, happy life. Yeah. Be willing to have conflict.
Be willing to have conflict. I think I heard one of the most powerful things you learn to do as a couple is argue.
Yeah.
Because you need to be able to argue to be in a healthy relationship, and argue.
It doesn't
in
mean
the sense
bully
of,
the person. It just
come to a resolution.
Yeah.
So not. But
at least you're having
yelling.
yourself heard. You at least just you're speaking, not holding it in, and then that holding that in turns into hate and resentment, and that's what I think breaks up a lot of relationships. At least speak your truth.
Absolutely, and that comes into my second thing of a healthy relationship is emotional maturity.
Yeah.
So being mature with your own emotional state,
Yes.
being in acceptance of like, yes, you have emotions, even if you are a man and you have ignored them your whole life, they are still there.
Yes.
And that also comes into emotional maturity around, yes, your partner's going to have emotions as well.
Yes.
So this whole...
Don't expect it to be rose, like fairy floss and lollipops all the time.
Exactly.
And don't react to it.
Yeah. Well, emotions are a very human experience.
Yes.
So come to terms with it. Be
Don't
mature
complain about it.
Be aware.
Yeah.
Develop emotional intelligence.
I feel like I should do another clap there. I do like to pull out the buttons here and there.
Good. Yeah.
I love that. Very, very simple, to the point. I think from my side, I feel like we've really nailed a lot of the main points, and I just want to say like a massive thank you for you obviously coming on the podcast, taking the time out. Is there anything else that you wanted to add?
I think we've covered
We've covered
much.
a fair bit. We've done a great job. We had a few malfunctions with the cameras, but we pulled it off. So yeah, Amanda, thank you so much for speaking today on the Make Men Great Again podcast. I really appreciate your honesty and vulnerability to share what can be like it takes a lot of confidence and courage to come on here and speak on stuff that I think is very uncomfortable. Like it really shows, despite it just shows your level of emotional maturity. And I think this is really important. These are really, really important conversations. So yeah, I just want to thank you for coming on the show today and being an amazing guest. And yeah, by the way, if you guys want to follow Amanda, she's got some awesome content on Instagram. I'm going to drop her links below whichever platform that you're watching this on right now. And you can see what she's up to. If you're a man and you listening to this and like, fuck, I need to do some work on myself, be sure to reach out to her. But yeah, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure.
It's been awesome.
My pleasure. So yeah, see you guys next week on another episode. This is the Make Men Great Again podcast. I'm your host, Scott James Andrews, and thanks for watching.
Thank you.
What an awesome episode. And if you want to watch more, just click the button here or here. Watch the next one, and we'll see you soon.